Hello and welcome to Daily Records. I'm Tommy Burton, and I'm continuing in the series of albums picked out by my daughter, and the next one is an artist that probably a lot of people are familiar with in the vinyl community. It is Mr. Alex Chilton, and this is his 1987 album, High Priest. Funny enough, 1987, this is only his third studio album. Now, it's the first one he did since 1979's Like Flies on Sherbert. And if you've never heard Like Flies on Sherbert, that is a listening experience. I like to call that album Big Star's fourth, because if the loose raggedness of Big Star's third album is your sort of wheelhouse and what you love, then Like Flies on Sherbert definitely carries that on to whole new levels. It's a rough album. But this album is a bit more sort of straightforward. This is a band of musicians out of Memphis and New Orleans. Now, what happened was by the late 70s, early 80s, Alex had pretty much been burned out on the music business. He didn't want to have anything to do with it. As Bob Dylan said, he drifted down to New Orleans, where he was lucky enough to be employed. That's what Alex Chilton did. And funny enough, he lived in New Orleans the rest of his life. He really enjoyed it. But he went down there, and from what I understand, he started washing dishes at a restaurant. And just was basically unknown. Like, nobody knew who he was. But as the Big Star legend grew throughout the late 70s into the 80s, more and more people kind of sought Alex out. And so he recorded this album with some Memphis guys as well as some New Orleans guys. Longtime Alex collaborator Doug Garrison played drums. But Renee Coleman, who played with him, Jim Dickinson is on this album. Ron Easley, Memphis legend. Of course, then you got guys like Wayne Jackson and people like that that played on this album. Jim Spake, tenor sax. Anybody from Memphis knows Jim. This came out on the Big Time label, like I said, in 1987. It features Alex's version of Raunchy, the instrumental song by Bill Justice. And so it was one of those early songs that Chilton learned on guitar. And he did actually tour behind this album. So it was sort of like this was Alex's coming out party and being welcomed back into the fold musically. And it's a pretty straight ahead album. It features some really cool stuff, and it of course has a little bit of humorous tracks like Dalai Lama, Volare, which Chilton was a big fan of. Take It Off, Make a Little Love. So it's a cross between just a straight sort of rock album and sort of that soul music, that funky soul music that Alex was really in love with, particularly in the later part of his career. I can't say that this album's going to just blow you away, and fans of Big Star might even be disappointed by what they hear, but I think it's a fun album. I think you got to take Chilton, particularly solo Chilton, with a little bit of maybe a grain of salt. You can't take it too seriously, because I think Alex just was having a good time and just doing what he wanted to do. And that's what makes Alex such an interesting artist to me. He wasn't one of those people that ever felt like he needed to be in any particular thing. And I've had several discussions with people about how huge the Big Star thing was in and of itself. Big Star was so big to so many people and so important, but it was just a step on Alex's musical journey. And so listening to an album like High Priest definitely sort of solidifies that you can tell that Alex has no interest in repeating anything before. He didn't want to retread those waters. He didn't want to do the Box Tops Part 2 or Big Star Part 2. He wanted to be his own voice. And so this is what this album really represents to me. It's a fun album, and like I said, you just have to take it not as seriously, and don't expect to have your mind blown, and just sit back and enjoy it. And I think you'll find that you will enjoy it very much so. So Alex Chilton's High Priest, today's Daily Record. Tune in tomorrow for another one. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter. It's TommyBurton75. Like, comment, share, all that good stuff. I appreciate everyone that watches and takes time to interact. And I'll see you guys again tomorrow with another Daily Record.